Welcome to the Kennedy Trout people. I didn't know if I was going to come live today or not because the internet just came back up. Thank all your subscribers. God bless you all.
If you could just pause it there. Lieutenant, you recognize what's picked up on screen now?
Yes.
What do you recognize that?
One of the front doors to Mr. O'Keefe's house, and I'm entering the frame on the left.
Is that what's coming if you could run it?
Get off there.
Thank you, Ms. Gilman. If I could have the next video 19. Also there. Again, in addition to going to the front door, sort of in the driveway area, where, if anywhere, are you going in this video now?
It looks like I'm heading towards from this vantage point to the right, which if you're looking at the house from the front would be the left, to see if there's anything in plain view through the windows, if I could see anybody, any persons, any activity.
Ms. Gilman, if you could press play.
University was followed.
Thank you, Ms. Gilman. You can take that down, Mr. Officer. We could have if we could have the light back on. Thanks, sir. And Lieutenant Ray, just lastly, once you left residence of 1 Meadows Ave, where did you go?
I believe we went back to the police station.
Just one moment, Your Honor.
Yes.
I have no further questions for the witness, Your Honor.
Okay. Mr. Unity?
The defense has no questions.
Your next witness, Mr. Alley?
Yes, Your Honor. Call Mr. Michael Camerano to the stand.
Both vehicles, the roadway is back up and I'll be here.
I may, while the witness is coming in, may we approach
Sure.
procedural time?
Wood County EMA, this is District 9. Do you
Five four 5388 530 Alright, you clear. I'll see.
Wood County EMA, this is District 9. Do you copy?
Alright, you clear. I'll see.
Let you all know, last night we had a tornado touch down in Salisbury, Indiana, on the Lewis and Clark subdivision in Salisbury, to let you all know. Let you all know, last night we had a tornado touch down in Salisbury, Indiana, on the Lewis and Clark
Wood County Hospital,
subdivision
this is
in
District 9. Do you
Salisbury,
copy?
to let you all know. Let you all know last night.
Harrison County Hospital, this is District 9. Do you copy? Harrison County Health Department, this is District 9. Do you copy?
Yeah, signal good.
I'll just step over there. It's our clerk and recorder. Someone's with the United States Court during the case now and here, the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you. Thank you. Just need you to really speak loudly into that microphone. Thank you.
Rico Flores, in regards to his Ford Ranger that he left several days back in March.
Whenever you're ready, Mr. Loudon.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Could you, please state your name and spell your last name for the jury?
Michael Camerano, Camerano.
And, where do you live, sir?
292 Mechanic Street in Canton.
So I'm going to ask you to keep your voice up, please, okay?
Yes, sir, if you want that microphone to go around to whatever's comfortable, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And how long have you lived in Canton?
18 years.
And that residence you live at, who, if anyone, do you live there with?
My wife and 2 children,
Which wife?
Catherine,
And how old are your 2 children?
16 and 13.
And the 16-year-old, is that a boy or a girl?
Girl,
And Your other child, was that a boy or a girl?
Boy,
Now, your wife, how long have the two of you been married?
25 years.
And do you work, sir?
Yes.
What is it that you do for work?
Labor's union.
And does your wife work as well?
Correct.
And what is she?
She's a nurse.
Sir, if I could turn your attention to January 28th, 2022. Recall that date, sir?
Yes.
And were you working that day?
Yes.
And do you recall what day of the week that was?
Friday.
And following work, what did you do after work?
I went home, did some stuff with the kids.
And during the time that you were home, who, if anyone, did you speak with, either via phone, text?
I was talking to John O'Keefe.
And with regard to John O'Keefe, how did you know John?
I met John 7 years ago.
And how was it that the two of you met?
We met through mutual friends, and then our kids became very friendly.
And the mutual friends through whom you met, who were they?
The Robertses,
And what are their first names?
Kurt and Kerry.
And starting with Kurt Roberts, how do you know Kurt Roberts?
I grew up with Kurt.
Where did the two of you grow up?
Milton?
So you've known Kurt Roberts most of your life, is that correct?
Correct.
And you mentioned that, so you have two children. How many children did Mr. O'Keefe have?
2.
And those two children, as far as their ages and genders, what were they in relation to your two children?
Same.
So 7-year-old girl.
13-year-old son. Yes.
And were each of your two children friends with Mr. O'Keefe's niece and nephew?
Correct.
Now, as far as friends were concerned, starting with your children and Mr. O'Keefe's niece and nephew, how close friends were they?
My daughter was extremely close.
And extremely close with John
Kaylee.
Kaylee.
Yeah.
And with reference to your son and John O'Keefe's nephew, what was sort of the nature of their relationship?
They were close also.
And as far as activities, what if any sort of activities did your kids do with Patrick and Kaylee?
Patrick and Michael played baseball together. Keely and Madeline played basketball. Soccer also.
And John O'Keefe, how would you describe your relationship with John?
We were close. We did a lot of stuff together. Pick up the kids, drop the kids off. We coordinated a lot of stuff together. We're friends.
And your residence versus, you're familiar with where Mr. O'Keefe lived, correct?
Yes.
Where did he live?
Meadows Ave.
And about how far away is Meadows Ave from where you live?
5 minutes.
Now, with regard to the girls, and by that I mean your daughter and John O'Keefe's niece, Kaylee, what, if anything, was going on with them on that particular day?
They both received acceptance letters to go to school.
And which school was that?
Bishop Fan?
That a private school?
Yes.
So at the time of this, in January 28th, 2022, what grade was your daughter and Kaylee Fergus?
8th grade.
And so this would have been going into 9th grade or high school, is that right?
Correct.
And what, if any, conversation did you have with Mr. O'Keefe in reference to that at some point in the afternoon?
We were both excited. They both received acceptance letters, and we wanted to get the kids together.
May I approach?
Yes.
County Health Department, this is District 9, do you copy? Grizzly County Health Department, this is District 9, do you copy?
I'm directing your attention.
Show counsel.
Ripley County EMA, this is District 9, do you copy?
So I'm going to instruct the jury on this. These are text messages, right? All right, so folks, before you consider any electronic communications in your deliberations, you must first find that it's more likely true than not that the person who authored or sent these messages is this witness and or John O'Keefe. If you do not find that it's more likely true than not that the messages were sent or authored by Mr. Camerata or Mr. O'Keefe, then you may not consider the electronic communication in deciding this case. Okay? Go ahead, Mr. Lally.
But I may approach this briefly.
Yes.
Well, I'm sorry. Before I do that, Mr. Camerano, do you recognize what's depicted on that page that I just showed you?
Yes.
What do you recognize it to be?
Text messages.
And those text messages that you had back and forth with Mr. O'Keefe on that date of January 28th?
Correct.
Your Honor, the problem will seek to introduce and admit the full essentially elected exhibit.
Is there any objection?
There you are.
Thank you.
This is District 9, you copy?
Thank you.
County EMA, this is District 9, you copy?
District 9, Scott County EMA excluded.
Mr. Camerano, bring your attention back to page 187 of that document. Do you see anything in there listing sort of participants in a text communication or conversation? On the bottom of the page.
Yes.
And as far as who are sort of listed as the participants in that conversation that comes to follow one another? Sorry, so just from page 187.
My wife.
Your wife and who, if anyone else?
John.
And your wife, John, and is your number there as well? Already have to.
Correct.
So essentially, that's a conversation between yourself, your wife, Catherine, and John O'Keefe, correct?
Correct.
Now, beyond sort of your memory of that, as far as the numbers that are associated with those names, do you recognize any of those numbers as being yours, your wife's, and John O'Keefe's?
No, there's just 3 numbers there.
Now, sir, if I could ask you to flip the page to the next one, 188. Your Honor, with the court's permission, may Ms. Gilman publish this to the jury as well?
Yes.
Ms. Gilman, if you could go to page 188.
This has been attached to the District 9 Hospital, Local Health Department, EMA, 800 MHz radio.
I'm sorry, Ms. Gilman, if you could just, so, sir, what's up on the screen right now? Is that what you have before you as page 188 of exhibits? I think it's 48.
Yes.
What's up on the screen? Is that what you have?
Correct.
Oh. And as far as from these conversations, there are blue bubbles and green bubbles. Is that correct?
Correct.
And if you can tell from the content or from anything else on the page for you, who is communicating in the blue bubble and who is communicating in the green?
Katie, my wife?
From within.
Oh, no, my mom communicating. Sorry, excuse me.
So there's a from and a to, is that
Yes.
correct?
Correct.
And so the sender would be in the from, is that your understanding?
Yes.
So this first one on the top of page 188, this is from you, is that correct?
Correct.
What, if anything, did you say in this conversation?
Congrats. This is great news.
And what, if anything, are you referring to by that?
Kaylee getting her acceptance letter.
And Ms. Gilman, if you could just scroll down.
22discretion on 40.
And the next bubble, who is that from and what does it say?
It's from me. Yes, we did.
And if you could continue to scroll down. Ms. Gilman. And again, from this bubble, who is this from and what does it say?
It's from John. Same news, I hope.
Is that still in reference to the news regarding team?
Correct.
And Ms. Gilman, if you could scroll down. And again, sir, the next bubble, who is it from and what does it say?
It's from me. Yes.
The next green bubble, what, if anything, does that say? And who is it from?
From John. Sweet. Congrats, Madeline.
And that's your daughter's name?
Correct.
And if you could continue to scroll
That
down.
is on a maroon 2019.
And again, the next bubble, who is it from and what does it say?
It's from my wife. I'm so excited for these girls. Madeline doesn't know yet.
That was coming if you could. Yeah. And again, the next bubble, who is it from and what does it say?
From JJ.
And
Well, I told Kaylee already, so I'm sure she's texted her by now. Poor kid is probably a nervous wreck.
who's coming if you could. And the next bubble,
I know.
who's that from?
It's from my wife, Kate.
And you could scroll down again, Ms. Gilman. And the next bubble, sir.
From me, I am sure she is freaking out.
If you could scroll down again, please. And the next bubble, sir, who's it from and what does it say?
From John. No doubt.
And if you could scroll down again, Ms. Gilman. Thank you. Now, sir, if I could, may I approach on this?
Yes. Do we need the lights on?
I don't.
Mr. Camerata, are you able to see without these lights on?
Yes, I can.
Okay.
So, sir, I'm going to direct your attention to within the same exhibits, page 156.
I see one thing wrong with this, people. They should black out those phone numbers. You know, I know it's a public document, but they should have blacked those phone numbers out on them texts. What do you all think about it? Leave something in the comment.
So just before we get to that, on this particular day, January 28th, 2022, where was your wife that day?
She was at home.
And at some point, did she go to work on the 28th?
Correct.
And what is sort of your typical work schedule with reference to, at that time, what was her sort of typical work schedule with reference to weekends?
She worked weekend nights, her shift.
And as far as your typical schedule on Friday evenings, what, if anything, was it that you would typically do?
Friday, I would be with the kids. I would, get them ready for stuff for the weekend. Take care of all the activity that we have.
And then in reference to that, as far as the weekends were concerned, or Friday evenings in particular, what, if any, sort of usual thing would you do with reference to Mr. O'Keefe?
I would usually go over the O'Keefe's house every Friday.
And with your children, is that correct?
Correct. With at least one of them, if not both of them.
So either your son's hanging out with Patrick or your daughter's hanging out with Kaylee, typically on Friday, correct?
Correct.
Now, with reference to what you have before you as page 156 of this exhibit, again, towards the bottom, is there an indication as to a conversation starting on the next page as far as who, if anyone, the participants are?
Never do it again, speaking.
What are you asking?
May I approach John?
Yes.
So what I want to bottom of page 156, so as far as that box on the bottom, what, if anything, does that indicate as far as the participants in the conversation that continues or begins on the next page?
Myself and John.
And sir, if I could ask you to flip the page over to page 157. And Your Honor, with court's permission, I published this part of the conversation for the jury.
Yes. There's no objection, Mr. Jackson, right?
No objection.
Your Honor, for the record, we're going from page 156 to page 159.
251 Veterans Parkway, repeating for New Dublin, Clarksville Fire Department, front car.
And so just come around, again, what's up on the screen, is that what you have before you as page 157?
Correct.
And you can look at either, whether it's the book in front of you,
Okay.
or it's easier to see the screen, either is fine. But with reference to what's up on the screen, that first bubble, as you could indicate to the jury again who it's from and what it's.
It's from JJ. Howdy, Kara. Do by the way.
And who is Karen?
I don't know.
Fair enough. Now, with reference, Ms. Gilman, if you could scroll down. And the next bubble again. I'm sorry.
No,
Mayor,
Take the screen down, please, Ms. Gilman. Turn on the lights, please. Thank you.
May I have just a moment with counsel?
Sure.
can I may I approach this to retrieve these?
Yes.
100 for 2027 and not 4,000.
Yeah.
Just for the record, Your Honor, I would ask at this point to strike whatever, I don't think there was a whole lot done on that page, but whatever that was did not
Yes,
seem-
it was an I don't know answer, so.
Thank you.
Yeah. So jurors disregard that last question and answer.
That's something.
Directing your attention, Mr. Cameron, what's on 157 before you, is that what's up on the screen now?
Yes.
And so my apologies for that. With regards to this first bubble on page 157, who is it from and what is this?
From JJ. You guys around tonight.
It's coming if you could scroll down. And with respect to that next who bubble, who is it from and what is this?
From me. Kate is working. I'm around. Madeline Michael is going to the Loose to play with a friend.
And what is the loose play?
The Loose is a elementary school.
Was there a play?
There's a park down there. Activities for kids.
And it's coming if you could scroll down. Next bubble. And again, who is it from and what does it say?
From JJ. Okay. At the driveway with her now. I'll text on my way back.
And could that be at the doctor?
Could be.
And Ms. Youngwood, if you could scroll down to the next one. And again, who is it from and what is it?
Oh, Don. From me to JJ, everything okay?
And if you could, down to the next bubble, Ms. Youngwood. And again, who is it from and what does it say?
From JJ. Yes, stupid shit.
And if you could scroll down to the next bubble, Ms. Youngwood. And again,
Ready?
Blank. As far as no text, but maybe.
Yeah. And go back to the microphone or.
So this guy out of the next bubble has no text to it, is that correct?
Correct.
And now you can move out of the way. I just wanted that question.
Problems all over USA today.
Your friendship with Mr. O'Keefe, did you become familiar with a person named Karen?
Yes.
And how did you become familiar with her, and who if anyone, was she to Mr. O'Keefe as far as?
John introduced me to her. She was John's girlfriend.
And just to be clear, do you see Miss Reed in the courtroom today?
Yes.
You can just identify as to where she's seated or an article of clothing that she's wearing.
She's sitting right there.
No, just as a record of reflect identification presented by the witness.
Yes.
Now, with regard to Ms. Reed, prior to that date of January 28, 2022, how long had you known Ms. Reed?
She was injured and requested EMS.
A year?
Do you recall approximately when you met her?
No.
And as far as you were aware, where Mr. O'Keefe lived, did Ms. Reed live there as well?
Shh. Yes, not full time.
So she had a house of her own, as far as you knew?
Correct.
And about how often on a given week would you see Mr. O'Keefe?
Couple times.
And about how often would you see Ms. Reed?
I would see her also.
The victims staging somewhere like Shirley's or the school parking.
Now, as far as your relationship with Mr. O'Keefe and or Ms. Reed, would there be occasions where you would see Mr. O'Keefe without Ms. Reed?
Correct, yes.
Or would there be any occasion where you would see Ms. Reed without Mr. O'Keefe?
Yes.
And where would that be?
At the house. Maybe at Fields.
Now, with reference to their relationship, what, if any, conversation would you have with Mr. O'Keefe in regard to his relationship with Ms. Reed?
Objection.
Sustain. We need a time frame.
In the time period around, say, the weeks leading up to January 28, 2020, what, if any, conversations you recall having with Mr. O'Keefe in regard to his relationship with him?
Just regular guy conversations.
Anything specific that you can recall?
No.
When you arrived at the house, or typically when you would come over to Mr. O'Keefe's house, where is it parked?
In the driveway to the right.
And is that what you did?
That hurt.
Yes.
When you arrived at the house,
Socks, you hurt Daddy. You hurt Daddy,
Into the house.
Socks.
Yourself and your dog?
Yes.
And when you got in there, who, if anyone, was at the house at that time?
Kaylee and John.
And what is it that you did, or what is it that occurred while you were in the house?
Excuse me?
What happened in the house?
We were just congratulating the girls, talking about how good it's going to be, different school, and just really excited for the girls.
And at some point, did yourself and Mr. O'Keefe make plans to leave the house?
Yes.
And where did you go?
We went down to McCarthy's.
And is that CF McCarthy?
Correct.
Is that an establishment? Where is it?
It's in Canton Center.
And about how far away from Mr. O'Keefe's house is that?
5-10 minutes.
And is that somewhere that you're familiar with? You've been before?
Not frequently, no.
Now, with regard to, you know approximately what time you left Mr. O'Keefe's house and went to CF McCarthy?
Look at here.
I don't.
You heard Dad.
And where were the girls when the two of you
I
went?
know you did, man.
They were in the house.
And at the time that you left there and went to CF McCarthy's, with anyone else,
Look at that.
was there any plans as far as meeting anybody else there?
I'm supposed to meet Karen.
Now, prior to leaving the house, what, if anything, you
I
and
know
Mr.
you
O'Keefe do with
didn't mean
reference
to hurt
to
Daddy.
vehicles that were in the driveway?
See, you heard
Um,
Dad. Look at here. Look at here.
So when we were leaving the house, I was parked in the driveway.
Soft
Sean
hurt Daddy.
Was parked on the
Look
left
here.
side of the driveway. John
Look here.
asked me if
See?
I backed
Look
up so
here.
John could move his car out of the way so Karen could pull
Now,
his
Soft's done it.
pull her car into the garage because of the snowstorm.
Lots of weathers, WALTERS, first of all.
I'm sorry, you said because of the weather?
Snowstorm?
And as far as snowstorm was concerned, what, if anything, did you know at that point in regard to that?
We were supposed to get a lot of snow.
I may have just one moment, huh?
Yes.
What? Yeah.
I'm just trying to remember which.
Matthew Roll, you want me to go up there and verify?
With the court's permission, I would ask that this gentleman be allowed to publish a part of Exhibit 6, which is the driveway of the ring video.
Okay.
Let me,
And this gentleman would like to ask for video number 145. Sorry, if you could pause a little bit. Mr. Cameron, if you recognize what's up on the screen.
Yes.
And what do you recognize as?
Myself and my daughter.
And as far as, may I approach the witness again, Your Honor?
Yes.
You heard Daddy. See that?
Just before you hear this, so laser pointer, if you just press that button.
Okay. Okay.
And Ms. Cameron, using that laser pointer that you now have with you, you could direct the jury's attention to where in this video you're
Take
observing
your
yourself.
socks.
And there are two vehicles in this sort of frame, is that correct?
Yes.
If you could, using the laser pointer, just describe to the
Queen
jury
Margaret.
whose car is who and where.
The white car is mine. The SUV is John's.
Now, as far as the ring system that Mr. O'Keefe had at his house at this time, as far as your knowledge of it, what, if anything, would the two of you do with reference to sort of picking up or dropping off kids in the ring video?
Yes, he had a camera, so like I'd always wave or give him, you know. I always knew that he was like watching.
And do you know how he was watching if he wasn't home?
Yes, on his phone.
So would that be sort of a running joke between the two of you?
Yes.
Thanks. Ms. Gilman, if you could play this.
Leave it, Charlie.
Thank you, George. This is Sergeant Sadie, redoing the charge.
Good, Captain. Hold the field, Hoosier George, radio check, over. Radio check, over.
Redoing the charge.
Ms. Gilman, if you could just pause it there briefly. Now, Mr. Cameron, are you familiar with Mr. O'Keefe's house? You've been there plenty of times, correct?
Yes.
And with reference to sort of where you and your daughter sort of exited from the street, what if any sort of entrances to the home were located in that area?
2 garage doors.
And are you familiar with that garage area?
Yes.
Is that typically how you would enter the house?
Yes.
And with regard to sort of the condition of the garage, was Mr. O'Keefe particular about that?
Yes. He was.
And how so?
He always kept things very tight. He was like OCD.
And so as far as garage doors, as far as, and what I mean by garage doors is sort of electronic up, up
So
and
there's
down.
2 garage doors. They go up and down, and there's a door. Just a single entry door.
On the left, as far as the left.
There was an old classic car he had, convertible.
And then as far as the right door,
It was empty.
and once beyond those sort of bay doors that go up and down, what if any other entranceway into the garage was?
There's a side door.
And if you recall, when you were entering at that time on 28th with your daughter, how did you enter it?
We went to the garage door, electric door.
And was that something, what if anything was fixed to those garage doors as far as security? Beyond what?
A keypad. We have to punch in a key.
And at the time or at any time, were you familiar with what that passcode was?
Yes.
Now, when you walk into the garage, how is it that you get from the garage to the house?
You walk into the garage and you walk up 3 steps and you go into a door.
And then once you sort of walk up the 3 steps and go into the door, what part of the house are you in when you enter?
You pretty much in the kitchen.
And you mentioned that Mr. O'Keefe was meticulous, if not OCD, when it came to the garage. How did that relate to how he kept the house?
The same. Everything was very tidy. When you walked in the door into the house, to the left, you put your shoes, your coats would be hung there.
And as far as shoes were concerned, is that something that you wore inside the house?
He'd rather you not.
And that was pretty well known to people that had been there before, correct?
Yes.
Now, Ms. Gilman, from the same exhibit, if I could, actually, I'm sorry. Your Honor, with regard to the next video that's not contained on this Exhibit 5 from the same video, I would offer that at this time as the next exhibit.
And there was no objection, Mr. Jackson?
No objection.
Okay. Thank you.
Your Honor, for the record, this would relate to Exhibit 6 and it's video number 148. And Ms. Judge, with the court's permission, may I publish that through this time around?
Yes.
Bring it back to you.
Central Squad 318 is available from Jim O'Neill, patient with AMDMS.
You can take on that. Play call back by the to prove itself.
And what was just up on the video, sir, it's just up on the screen as video number 148. That was what you were testifying previously as far as moving the car.
Correct.
And why was that again?
So Karen could pull in the driveway, in the garage, excuse me.
So the expectation, from your understanding, is that Ms. Reed was coming back to the house at Meadows later on that evening.
Correct.
Now, as Mr. O'Keefe from that video on the screen there was walking to the car. Did you happen to notice how he was dressed?
Yes.
And as far as what you observed in that video, what you recall from that evening, is that how he was dressed that evening?
Yes.
And when I say how he was dressed, for sort of the entirety of the time that you were with him?
Yes.
So it's January 28th. You recall, you indicated there was a snowstorm coming. It was cold out, is that correct?
Correct.
And with reference to that, was Mr. O'Keefe someone that would typically wear a coat?
No.
And ever? That you can recall?
Never that I can recall.
And Your Honor, with the court's permission, with reference to that same Exhibit 6, if I could publish video number 149.
Okay.
And Ms. Gilman, for the sake of time. And, yes, you can break it down. So from that video, Mr. Camerano, what is it that you and Mr. O'Keefe are doing in that video?
Heading down to McCarthy's.
She'll be out at Old State Road 60.
Now-
Do you want the lights on, Mr. Lally?
Yes.
Thank you.
Radio 66 transporting on emergency floor.
Now, at some point after you arrive at C.F. McCarthy's, who, if anyone else, sort of joins your group?
Kurt.
And that'd be Kurt Roberts, is that
Correct.
And how was it that he came to C.F. McCarthy's that night?
I texted him.
And in general terms, what have you called sort of what that text communication was like between yourself and Mr. Roberts?
Yes, he said he was busy. He was doing something that I texted him that he was a pussy.
And following that text, did Mr. Roberts eventually arrive at C.F. McCarthy's?
He showed up, yes.
And about how long after you and Mr. O'Keefe arrived did Kurt show up?
I would like to say maybe an hour.
And if you know, when was it that at some point you indicated Ms. Reed appeared at C.F. McCarthy's as well?
Correct.
And do you know about how long after yourself and John arrived that Ms. Reed?
I don't.
Now, with reference to that establishment of C.F. McCarthy's, are you aware, or have you become aware that there was surveillance video from inside the bar that night?
Yes.
You've seen some of that footage, is that correct?
Yes.
Your Honor, may I approach?
Yes.
I'll want to seek to introduce and admit the surveillance video from C.F. McCarthy's as the next.
And there's no objection, Mr. Jackson?
It's done.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Forward.
Tori.
Now, with the court's permission, I would seek to publish portions of that video for the jury at this time.
Okay.
And Ms. Gilman, if you could, from that video,
We'll be at the turning point. Been advised to
the
respond over Light
first,
Springs Treatment Center.
yeah, the first video. If I could ask you to play from about 7 minutes and 40 seconds, and we'll go through about 9 minutes.
Show you out to University. Squad 6, can you repeat your traffic?
We were diverted from the turning point over to the Light Springs Treatment
Now,
Center
do
patients.
you recognize what's up on the screen with the camera on?
So it's on
Yes.
Light Springs now.
And what do you recognize that?
C.F. McCarthy's.
And yourself and Mr. O'Keefe are not in frame at this time, is that correct?
No.
If you could, use the laser pointer for you, if you could direct the jury's attention to where it was about you in reference to the bar that you and Mr. O'Keefe eventually came to congregate that.
That's her aunt, advised her mother, just got off the phone.
These seats here.
Advising her she's gonna have
And from this video, from your time there that night or prior occasions, can you see sort of where the front door is to the
She
establishment?
is the only one
Yes.
inside the residence.
Could you direct the jury's attention where that?
Sister does live on the property as well, in a trailer. Not sure if she's home or not.
And so what I'm going to ask in just a moment is for Ms. Gilman to press play, and then what I'd ask you to do is if you could just direct the jury's attention to when, if at all, you observe yourself and Mr. O'Keefe walking.
Okay.
Ms. Gilman, if you could.
Central Scottsville. So you can just Scottsville clear and available in the water AMA.
1014.
And Ms. Gilman, if you could pause it right there. And just, I'm sorry, Mr. Cameron, you're directing with the laser pointer.
Sorry.
If you could just describe what you're directing. Please.
That is me. And that is John.
And thanks.
Well-
Ms. Gilman, if you could just again play this through the 9 minutes.
Started a fishing violation. I've got 227s. First will be on blackmail. Last name Sheed. Sam, Henry, Edward, Adam, David. First name Amarion. Adam, Mary, Adam, Robert, Edward, Ocean, Nora. Date of birth 2002, 1031. Prick per second.
You said 9 the last name.
Last name on the first subject is Sheed. Spelling of Sam, Henry, Edward, Adam, David.
As a second.
Second will be on a blackmail. Last name Burnett. Boyd, Union, Robert, Nora, Edward, Tom, Tom. First name Ezekiel. Spelling of Adam, Zebra, Edward, King, Ida, Adam, Lincoln. Date of birth 2001, 0201. You could also email me what those returns, please.
And for the record, I think we're at about 9 minutes and 41 seconds or so.
Okay.
So with reference to Steve McCarthy, you went there, had some, correct?
Yes.
Do you recall what you were drinking or what John was drinking that night?
Beer.
Is that sort of typical for the two of you?
Yes.
Do you recall sort of, was that from the tap, a bottle, or something?
From the bottle.
And do you recall what type of beer typically you would drink or Mr. O'Keefe would drink?
Bud Light.
And do you recall specifically that's what you had that night, or that's just what you typically have?
Typically, I think we had Bud Light.
And if you know approximately how many beers or how many drinks did you have over the course of your time at C.F. McCarthy's?
I don't.
As far as yourself versus Mr. O'Keefe, do you recall sort of in relation to each other how much you each had to drink?
Maybe 6 beers.
And what I'm asking, sir, is it's not like, did one of you have 10 and one of you had 2, or was it sort of commensurate with each other?
Commensurate, one for one of them.
Okay. So essentially you're buying rounds as you go along.
Correct.
Now, from your time at C.F. McCarthy's, how would you describe sort of the tone or sort of the demeanor within the group that you were in that night?
Pretty good.
So no arguments, no fighting, anything like that?
No.
And just briefly going back to the clothing that you observed Mr. O'Keefe wearing in this and that you recall him wearing that night, what, if any, damage or tears or anything like that did you note in any of his clothing that night?
I did not see any.
Now, Ms. Gilman, if I could ask you to take this down and go to the third video. And Ms. Gilman, if I could direct your attention to the 6 minute and 10-second mark through the 7 minute mark. And when you get to 6:10, if you could just pause it. Now, Ms. Gilman, I'm directing your attention to the screen. If you could, from the parties that were within your group sort of that night at the bar, if you could just direct the jury's attention to who is who or if anyone you recognize.
Kurt.
So in addition to yourself and Mr. O'Keefe, Mr. Roberts now joined your group?
Correct.
And Ms. Gilman, if you could just play it for me.
4020055879.
If you could pause there, please. Now, with reference to Mr. Roberts, was he a beer drinker as well?
Yes.
From a bottle that night, same sort of thing that yourself and Mr. O'Keefe were having?
Correct.
And from where it's paused at this point in the video, who's anyone else you recognize sort of coming into the frame or coming to join your group?
Karen Reed.
And so from this, is this about the time that she entered the establishment or came into the bar?
Yes.
Now, with reference to Ms. Reed, what, if anything, do you recall her drinking during your time that you were both at C.F. McCarthy's that night?
She was drinking out of a glass.
And if you know, what if anything did you observe as far as the color of what was in the glass?
It was clear.
And beyond sort of the clear liquid in the glass, what, if anything else, did you observe in the glass as far as the straw, fruit, anything like that?
A straw, maybe.
And what, if anything, did you know what was in the glass?
I didn't.
And as far as you could tell, what was in the glass?
Vodka?
Is that something that Ms. Reed would typically drink if you had been out with her on prior occasions?
Yes.
Now, I'm sorry to keep jumping back and forth between, but Ms. Gilman, if you could just hit play again and let it run, to the 7 minute mark.
Kentucky 3278 Frank, repeating 3278 Frank. This is a recreation vehicle showing expired. I couldn't get a return.
Now, Ms. Gilman, from this same third video in this exhibit of the C.F. McCarthy's, if I could ask you to forward to the 14-minute mark, pause that. And if you could, I would ask that you play this from the 14-minute mark until about 14 minutes and 15 seconds, just about 15 seconds.
Squad, Clark.
And Ms. Gilman, you can take that down. So Ms. Camerano indicated that your son was at Bruce Elementary School for a play of some sort, is that correct?
He was for a little bit.
And from there, where, if anywhere else, did he go that day?
He went to a friend's house to skate in his backyard.
skate as far as just skating, or what if anything else?
He was skating, a little potty.
Well, let me ask you this: was he a hockey player?
Yes, he's a hockey player.
Okay, so when you say skating,
Skating, yes. Makeshift hockey rink in somebody's backyard.
And at some point with relation to that, what if anything sort of caused you to leave C.F. McCarthy's on that night?
I received a phone call that my son was hit in the face with a hockey stick and he lost his tooth.
And so upon receiving that call, where did you go?
I went to go get him.
And do you recall about what time that was that you left C.F. McCarthy's to go get him?
I don't recall.
Now, from the group that you were with, as far as yourself, Mr. O'Keefe, Ms. Reed, and Ms. Roberts, who, if anyone, left first?
I believe Kurt.
And do you recall sort of how it was that Kurt left?
Kurt just got up and left.
So, sort of an Irish goodbye?
Yeah, Irish goodbye, yes.
That's something he's known for?
Yes.
And about when was that in relation to when you left?
Not too soon after.
I'm sorry, not too soon after or not too soon before?
I left after, probably, I'd like to say 15 minutes after Kurt left.
Now, with the court's permission, Your Honor, I'd just like to publish just more segments from this.
Okay.
So, Ms. Gilman, if I could direct your attention to the fourth video. Fourth one down. And if I could ask you to forward it to about 19 minutes and 40 seconds. Good play. And Ms. Gilman, if I could ask you to just pause it there for 1 second. Now, Ms. Cameron, from your looking at this surveillance video here, well, from your memory of that night, we see Mr. O'Keefe speaking to another gentleman. Is that correct?
Yes.
You know who that person is?
Yes.
And who is that person?
Sully?
And do you know his first name or anything beyond just Sully?
Sully, I don't know his first name.
And how is it that you know him?
Kids play baseball with his son.
So in addition to your son playing baseball with Mr. O'Keefe's nephew, Mr. Roberts, was he have a son that around the same age?
Correct.
And this individual, Sully, he has a child that plays baseball with the three of your kids?
Correct.
Is that someone that you had contacted to meet there, or he just happened to be there?
He just happened to be there.
Ms. Gilman, if you could just play again and just run to about the 20-minute mark or so. Now, Ms. Gilman, if you could move that forward again to 24 minutes and 10 seconds. And if you could just let this run until about 24 minutes and 20 seconds to just about 10 seconds. And so, Mr. Camarano, did you see yourself in that portion of the video?
Yes.
And you know what you were doing at that time?
Leaving.
And so prior to leaving, had you sort of settled up a tab or something?
Yes, I picked up the tab.
And then you left and went to get your son, correct?
Correct.
Ms. Gilman, you can take that down. Now, Mr. Camarano, you left there, went to pick up your son, is that correct?
Yes.
And following picking up your son, where did you go?
Back to John's house.
And why did you go back to John's house at that?
My daughter was there picking her up.
You went to pick up your daughter?
Correct.
You recall approximately what time that was?
11.
And when you came back to the residence of One Meadows, you parked in the driveway again?
Correct.
And did you physically sort of go in the house to pick up?
No, I did not.
Now, as far as from the time that from the time that you left with Mr. O'Keefe to go to see McCarthy's versus the time that you came back, anything changed as far as position of Mr. O'Keefe's car?
No.
What, if anything, did you note as far as the garage doors were concerned, or any damage or anything like that?
Everything looked normal.
And, Your Honor, with the court's permission, I would seek to just publish another video or two from Exhibit 6.
Okay.
But, and at this time, Ms. Gilman, if I could have from the driveway again, video 152.
Well,
Ms. Gilman, you can stop today. Now, from that video 152 that was just up on the screen, sir, can you describe for the jury, just as sort of what was going on in that video?
I was picking up my daughter, Madeline, and my son, Michael, was with me. Yes, all three of us.
And where did you go from there?
Home.
And when you got home, well, let me ask you this first. During the time that you were at C.F. McCarthy's, you obviously, at some point, you didn't do an Irish goodbye?
No.
So at some point you indicated to Mr. O'Keefe and or Ms. Reed that you were leaving to go pick up your son?
Yes.
And what, if any, indication did they give to you as far as where they were going, or what were their intentions for the rest of the week?
They were heading either across the street or to the hillside.
And when you say across the street, what, if anything, was across the street?
There's another bar room.
That's the waterfall?
Waterfall, yes.
You familiar with that establishment as well?
Yes.
Where is that in relation to C.F. McCarthy?
Across the street to the left. If you were coming out of C.F. McCarthy's.
Walking distance, is that correct?
Correct.
And you leave, you get your son, you pick up the daughter at Mr. O'Keefe's house, and then you go home, correct?
Correct.
And when you get home, about how much longer were you up before you went to bed?
Wasn't up much longer.
And when you typically go to bed, what, if anything, do you do with your phone?
Put him on the charger.
Where's the charger located in reference?
In the kitchen.
And when, following to the next day, about what time is it that you wake up on the 29th?
5:30, 6 a.m.
And what was it that woke you up? If you know?
Phones ringing.
And how many phones do you have?
2.
And essentially one personal, one work, is that correct?
Correct.
Were both phones ringing or one of them?
One phone at that time.
Was that your work or your personal?
My personal phone.
And get up, you hear that, you look at your phone, what, if anything, do you see on the screen?
I see a lot of missed calls, a bunch of missed calls from Karen, and missed calls from my wife's work.
And when you say missed calls, we're talking about one call, several calls?
Several calls.
Any voicemails that you recall associated with those calls?
I don't recall.
And so based on sort of making that observation of the missed calls, what do you do with that?
I pick up the phone and call my wife.
And what, if anything, did you learn from your wife about this?
My wife said to me that John.
Okay, sustained.
John, may we approach?
Okay.
Mrs. Camerata, you call your wife, and what, if anything, is it in general that she tells you?
She tells me that John didn't come home last night.
And she's still at work at this point, is that correct?
Correct.
Did she indicate to you how she came to find that?
She just she said she's received phone calls from
whom?
Karen.
From Karen. And then based on that, you have a conversation with your wife about John's niece and nephew, is that right?
Yes, my wife says to me, go get Kaylee. Kaylee is home.
So at that time, your wife tells you that Kaylee is home in Meadows Ave by herself.
Yes.
And so based on that information, what is it that you do?
I realize that Kaylee's home alone, so I throw some clothes on, go out to the car, clean the car off real quick, and get in the car and go.
When you say clean the car off real quick, what, if anything, did you have to clean up?
I cleaned the snow off the front windshield.
And again, you sort of drive over to John's house to get Kaylee?
Correct.
And when you get there, you pull in the driveway as well?
Yes.
And when you get to John's house and you pull in the driveway, what, if anything, did you observe about sort of the condition of the garage doors to that?
When I pulled in, I could tell the garage door was open, left open.
Which one? The one to the right? Or
To the one to the right.
And do you go inside that door?
I do.
What, if anything, did you do once you went inside?
Once I went inside, I saw Kaylee. I asked Kaylee get whatever she needed and to come and get in the car. While she was doing that, I started clearing some snow. I thought maybe snow hit the sensors so that the door couldn't go down.
And so you start clearing the snow with a shovel?
With the shovel that was in the garage, yes.
And after you had cleared some of the snow with the shovel, what did you do with regard to the doors at that point?
So I tried to put them down. They wouldn't go down. Then I asked Kaylee, I think, to re-enter the code to see if she could get the doors to go down, but the doors would not go down. The door.
And at some point, how did you get the...
So there's a red rope. I manually pulled that, shut the door, locked the doors. There's 2 side locks on the garage door, and I went out through the side garage door.
Now, when you arrived at the residence and you pulled into the driveway, do you recall how many vehicles were in the driveway when you got there?
Yes.
And how many?
2.
And whose vehicles were?
John's and Karen's.
And John's vehicle, where was that in relation to the last time that you saw it when you picked up your dog?
Same spot.
And as far as the defendant Reed's vehicle, where was that in relation to the garage or in relation to the truck?
It was pulled in on the left side, all the way in.
So in the area of the garage door that you were just speaking
Correct. Mm-hmm.
And at that time, did you look at the vehicle or touch the vehicle in any way?
No.
Fair to say that your focus was sort of on the garage door and the fact that it was open, correct?
Correct.
And why was that? Maybe self-evident, but why was your focus on
Because I figured John would go crazy when he came home and all the snow was in his garage.
Now, at any point in time when you initially got the call from your wife, did you yourself reach out to John at any point?
I did not.
All right, if I may, I would just seek to publish a few more videos from Exhibit 6, the driveway ring.
Okay.
And Ms. Gilman, if I could have from those first starting with video 155, and essentially it's going to go 155 through 158. You could pause it. And Ms. Camerano, you recognize what's up on the screen again?
Yes, my car.
Is this sort of when you're pulling in to get there?
Correct.
Using the laser pointer before you, again, if you could just direct the jury's attention to where you observed Ms. Reed's vehicle. And is that essentially from what you observed there, that's where it was the entirety of the time that you were there?
Yes.
So nobody else came to the home during the time that you were there to pick up Taylor and shoveling out the snow from the garage?
No.
Ms. Gilman, if you could just run. Gilman, if you could play the next video, 156.
Car's locked.
It's going to video 157. Last thing, Ms. Gilman, video 158. Ms. Gilman, you can take that. So, Mr. Cameron, what was just in those last 4 videos that were played before the jury? Is that essentially the process that you were describing as far as yourself and Kaylee trying to get the garage door down?
Correct.
And so you leave from there and go back to your house, is that correct?
Yes.
And where does sort of you and Kaylee go once you get inside?
We go into the house. We're in the kitchen in my house, and my daughter. Get my daughter up.
And your daughter then sort of hangs out with Kaylee for a period of time?
Correct. They go downstairs and they're hanging out.
And at some point in time, how does Kaylee leave your house, or where does she go?
I take Kaylee home.
And why is it that you take Kaylee home? About what time is it, if you know?
I don't know what time. Paul had called me.
By Paul, who do you mean?
Paul O'Keefe, John's brother.
And he informed you that John passed?
Yes.
So you took Kaylee to the house on Meadows Ave to be with your family, is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Jackson?
Thank you. Mr. Cameron, just a few questions. You and your wife did spend a lot of time with John O'Keefe and Karen Reed as a couple, correct?
Decent amount, yes.
Would you consider John one of your best friends?
A good friend.
In fact, you were close enough that your children spent a lot of time with John O'Keefe and Karen Reed as a couple and their kids, correct?
Correct.
In fact, is it true that sometimes they would even vacation together with Mr. O'Keefe and Ms. Reed?
Correct.
There was a trusting relationship that you had with both Mr. O'Keefe and Ms. Reed to put your kids in their care.
Correct.
You mentioned this wonderful news about your kids, your daughter, getting into this great school. I think it's called Bishop.
Bishop Fan, yes.
Before the acceptance, there was actually a sort of a process, like an open house, that you needed to take the kids to, correct?
Yes.
You took your daughter, right? Spent a lot of time just with Karen, Miss Reed.
Correct.
Running errands, going to Miss Reed's house, having Miss Reed care for her.
Correct.
And you had no issues with that
No.
because you liked Karen. You
Correct.
liked Miss Reed.
Correct.
it was probably, did you say once a week that you would hang out with and socialize with Miss Reed and Mr. O'Keefe?
Yes.
So you got to know them not just individually, but as a couple together, correct?
Yes.
You saw them on most Friday nights, right?
Correct.
You never saw them argue or fight.
Argue.
Matter of fact, one time you were asked about this in front of a grand jury, and you said, I wouldn't even call it bickering, they would just banter together.
I guess so, yes.
You never heard Mr. O'Keefe complain about Miss Reed or vice versa?
No, I did hear him complain about like when Karen would buy like very nice things for the kids, like he wouldn't like that, stuff like that, or take the kids to get their nails done or something like that.
So maybe spoiling the children.
Yes. Yes.
Certainly nothing to suggest that there was any abuse or anything like that. It was just a matter of fact.
Correct. Correct.
Mr. O'Keefe had an idea about how to raise children that was maybe a little bit more modest than Miss Reed did.
Correct.
So you described earlier at another hearing, you described the situation. Miss Reed got a very expensive sweater for Mr. O'Keefe's niece.
Correct.
And Mr. O'Keefe's response was, "Well, I wish she hadn't done that. That's spoiling that little girl."
Yes.
You would agree there are worse things in the world than spoiling a child.
Correct.
I'll let it stand.
You never heard Mr. O'Keefe even hint at the idea of breaking up with Miss Reed?
Not that I can recall.
I want to turn your attention to January 28th, if I could. We saw a video, and you explained what was happening in the video, where some cars were being jostled around. That was Mr. O'Keefe actually moving his car to facilitate Miss Reed bringing her car over to his house to put it in the garage, correct?
Yes.
Kind of a chivalrous thing to do for your loved one.
Yes.
Didn't want her to be out in the snow if it was going to be a heavy snow, is that right?
Correct.
And the idea was that even that weekend, he intended that Miss Reed would likely be with him and the family for the entirety of the weekend during that blizzard.
Correct.
So she'd have a nice warm place and a dry place to put her car.
Yes.
You saw a video that Mr. Lally played for you of the moment. There's several videos, but I want to direct your attention for your memory to the video of when Miss Reed actually made her way into McCarthy's.
Yes.
You had that scene in your mind?
Yes.
You saw in the video when Miss Reed actually walked into the location how Miss Reed and Mr. O'Keefe greeted each other.
Objection.
I'll allow it.
Correct?
Yes.
It appeared that that was quite an affectionate greeting. Did you agree?
Objection.
Do you agree with that?
They kissed.
Would you consider a kiss affectionate?
Yes.
They hugged each other, correct?
I don't recall.
Mr. O'Keefe put his right arm out and Miss Reed sort of nestled into his embrace,
Okay.
and that's when he kissed her?
Yes.
Okay. They seemed happy to see each other.
Yes.
You didn't observe while you were at CF McCarthy's with them, you didn't observe any arguing or bickering between the two of them?
No.
As a matter of fact, they were sort of the normal, affectionate, laughing, happy couple that you were used to seeing, correct?
Yes.
There didn't seem to be any tension between them at CF McCarthy's, is that right?
Not that I recall.
All right. I want to just ask a couple of more questions. During the span of time that you knew them to be together, would you describe their relationship as being normal and caring?
Objection.
I'll sustain that.
I want to just draw your attention to the month before Mr. O'Keefe's passing. Would you describe their relationship to be normal as far as you knew it to be?
Yes.
And on the day before Mr. O'Keefe's passing, would you describe their interactions to be normal, appearing, and affectionate?
Yes.
That's all I have now.
Okay. Anything, Mr. Lally?
No redirect, John.
All right, Mr. Camerano, thank you very much. You're all set, sir. All right, jurors, why don't we take our morning recess? We'll take 15, 20 minutes.
Jurors, if you'd fold and close your notebooks, placing them on your chairs, taking your belongings. All rise, jury out.
Hey there, Karen Reed, trial watchers. You know what a lot of the trials we cover remind me? It's that you gotta be careful who you surround yourself with, who you let into your life. Do you really know? I mean, it's a scary thing to think about. Well, that's why I'm so thrilled to talk to you about the sponsor of this week's Law and Crime Trial stream, truthfinder.com. Honestly, with our content, I really can't think of a better service that can provide actual safety for you guys. Why do I say that? I say that because Truthfinder is one of the largest public records search services in the United States. Their whole goal is to help people like you learn about the people in their lives. And here's how it works. You go on their website, truthfinder.com, and you type in a name. For instance, your new neighbor. Let's say your new neighbor is me, Jesse Weber. Make it easy. You type in my name, and within minutes and a paid subscription purchase, you can access unlimited reports that could include information like phone numbers, location history, criminal and traffic records, including possible arrests and criminal convictions. Goes without saying, but I don't have any of those. Truthfinder has been partnering with Law and Crime for a while now. We actually use it to research some of the cases that we've been covering. But in general, it can help provide peace of mind when you do these unlimited public records searches. Also, you know what's really useful? From within that report, you can search an address to see registered sex offenders that may live in that area too. That's the point. Unless you use Truthfinder, you may never know the reality about the people around you. Also, Truthfinder is just an incredible resource to use when reconnecting with people like long-lost friends, family members you haven't spoken to in a while. You can use Truthfinder to help track down these people's information. It's just a great tool. Now, here's the kicker. Right now, you can get 50% off of your first month of confidential background reports. Just go to truthfinder.com/LCLive. Hey there, Karen.
Okay, thank you all for coming, watching the Karen Reed story. She charged with murder of her boyfriend, a Boston police officer, John O'Keefe, before leaving him to die in January of 2022. Reed is now facing several charges, including second-degree murder for the death of O'Keefe. Reed claims that she is the victim of massive frame-up by the state and local police. People, use common sense. Take your notes while you're watching this. And like I say, if you got your reasonable doubts, you got to find not guilty. What I have seen so far, I got my reasonable doubts. I know it's early in the trial. And you all got friends, it's police officer, crime technician, CSI people. To me, what I saw from the police department, the prosecutor it's a botch investigation. So, it's only my opinion. I don't have any degrees in this kind of work. Number one, You do not use a leaf blower to blow the snow away, because you'll blow evidence away. You've seen real life police videos where they might take a paintbrush or something like that and do it little by little where you won't disturb the evidence. Most of your crime technicians have a pity dish with a lid on it. You can put evidence in, just like this blood they found in the snow. You don't put it in a red cup, unsanitized, you know. So there's a whole lot of screw up. And you saw the grocery bag the last time I live streamed. It wasn't an evidence bag. That's a regular grocery bag. You don't do that, people. Nothing is sanitized. You know, it's weird. You know, you got good police officers. You got good crime technicians. But what I've seen is a screw up. You know, use your common judgment. Use your common sense. And like they showed the garage door. Why wouldn't the garage door shut? You punch in a code, it should have shut. I don't know the answer of it. You all got doors like that. What's the problem why the door didn't shut? Sometimes there might be CB radios that interfere with those garage door openers. Earlier when they came out with it, that was a possibility. Since this happened in 2022, maybe they improve those garage door stuff. There's a whole lot of answers. I know you're all smarter than me out there. There's things I don't understand or comprehend. Use your common sense when you're on a jury. Take notes, listen. Some of you probably watch police shows or CSI, but CSI is just a TV show. But there is some truth to those CSI shows like Las Vegas, Miami, New York. When they make shows like that, they always got an advisor from a CSI or a police department. So there's some truth into it. But why would they use those red cups, collect snow with blood on it, no lids, unsanitary? You don't know what could be in those cups. I know the cops said they unsealed it, but it's still not sanitary. Those technicians there, they should have petri dishes to put stuff like it in where they can seal it, put a tape around it, put it in a place where it's cold where the snow wouldn't melt. You know, common sense. So Rita's accused of drunk driving and hitting her boyfriend. I don't remember hearing anything on law and crime in court where that she was drunk or any blood work taken to show that she was drunk. So people, there's too many unanswered questions. if you all got a reasonable doubt that she is not guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, you must find her not guilty. I know you heard the judge said don't watch it on TV or look it up on YouTube and etc., etc. I know people will still look it up. So, that's just something I want you to consider. I know there's a whole lot of people streaming it. You got court TV, you got law and crime, and all this. And the DUI guy is supposed to be down there. He's a lawyer out of Louisville, Kentucky. He's a good lawyer. Some people thinks not. And I like the guy. When he explains anything he does, court cases, that he explain it with people who's dumb, slow in the brain like me, it's hard to comprehend. He makes it where we all can understand. I have watched the U.S. Supreme Court back when Trump was in there. They had his hearing. And them judges up on the bench there at the U.S. Supreme Court, they explain everything for people like me that can't comprehend it. I appreciate those judges, how they done it. You gotta be good judges. I saw on Channel 11 News, it's WHAS, Channel 11 News out of Louisville, Kentucky, that the ex-sheriff, Jamie Noel, was back in court. I guess he's going to try to get out of his 60 days of contempt. And the judge ruled, Matlock is his name, out of Washington County, which is over in Salem, Indiana. He said, 60 days stand. Also, my sources, which I can't mention because they know I won't mention it because I won't get nothing else. Well, the Indiana State Police and the FBI with a search warrant went to his home in Florida. What they found, I can't tell you. They wouldn't tell me. That'd be more to come later in Jamie Now's trial. Okay, I asked a few people, is the RICO Act, is that state or federal? He said it's federal. And you all remember back when Al Capone and them, that feds went after them. They used that on them to get them on the RICO Act. And in my opinion, I figured the feds would get them for the RICO Act. You all have to go on the internet and read about what that consists of. I might tell you one thing, but you need to look it up. And you saw in one of my videos where this African American lady that killed her 5-year-old child and stuck her in a suitcase and put her out there in Washington County, Indiana. And a mushroom hunter found her. The other lady that helped her, she's serving time in prison. I think the woman's prison might be up around Plainfield area, Terre Haute, somewhere up there. So she's serving time. And you also, when you watch the video, she was being watched by the CIA or NSA or whatever, I forget, and Space Force Police. And you heard what she said in that. Maybe she's trying to have a crazy defense, but I believe Judge Matlock ordered and competency hearing, which that's usually part of the case like that. Anybody killed a kid must be crazy. Her own kid. And I know, you all know, you got people in prison that you know in the United States or outside the United States. If somebody hurts a kid, they're going to put you in solitary confinement. I know they do it here in the USA. So, in your all's countries, I don't know how they do it. I like to hear your all comments about that in your country. I saw on the news in Russia that Putin got sworn in since he's the president. I know some of you don't like Putin. Some of you don't like President Trump. But we wouldn't be in a war. Russia and Ukraine wouldn't be in a war right now if Trump was president. He kept peace. I don't know if they teach it in history class anymore. You all can look it up. Look up who's the presidents of the wars that we had in the past. 9 chances out of 10, they would be Democrats. Why does the Democrats want to have war? You know, killing our children, our grandkids, mothers and sons and fathers in the war. Why do we have to get involved in other people's war? I know you all agree with me. We have homeless people here in the USA. Homeless veterans, no fault of their own. Most of them lost their jobs because they're moving to other countries. That's why they're homeless. They can't make their payments, this and that. So let's take care, we the people here in the United States. You people in Washington, D.C., you work for me and the other people of the good USA. As Trump says, let's make America great again. It was great when President Trump was the president. Everything they doing to Mr. Trump is all Democrats. Why don't the Democrats want him in there? Common sense people tell you. Gasoline prices was down. We wasn't at war when President Trump was in there. President Trump, like so many other presidents, you can look it up. other presidents gave their whole paychecks away to, other charities out there. I can't remember them, but my son told me there was other presidents out there. So you all can look it up. President Trump done everything he said when his campaign. Except one thing, but I don't blame him. He talked about arrest Hillary. I know there's people I've talked to who said Hillary should have been arrested, but Trump is trying to have peace with all your people, Democrats and Republicans. And, but I am a registered Democrat. I voted Democrat yesterday. I went to U-Haul's channel. I met him through Hot Damn Ellen and a couple of weeks ago. He subscribed to my channel. I have some of his people subscribe last night. I want to thank you all new subscribers. I know you heard this before. I'm asking you old timers on YouTube. You're not old, you're young. You started out when you was new, didn't get that many subscribers. You probably done 100 videos before you get where you're at now. Just don't forget about us little people. Help us out to get to our 1,000 subscribers. Help us get our 4,000 watch hours where we can get super chats and all this. I want to give a big shout out to a couple of YouTube channels that I like. RD on the Scene in Bakersfield, California. His other YouTube channel is Kern County Crime Watcher, which is Tuesdays and Fridays. It's like Roger, his son-in-law, his daughter, like that in Bakersfield, California. I would love to do something like that, but there's not this much going on here. And I always call him the ugly one, the expert. Hey, you all, I know your ladies like it, especially in the expert when he does the wiggle. Your ladies go crazy. You love it. If you could, you throw dollars up there on the stage. And also, I'm going to give a big shout out to the expert's wife, the White Rabbit. Hey, expert. How come the White Rabbit got more subscribers than you do? I say she got over 200,000 subscribers. I could be wrong. Sorry, White Rabbit. I watched a little bit of the expert last night until the internet went out, which it didn't come on until about 9 o'clock this morning. I want to give a shout out for the DUI guy, the umbrella guy, Megan Fox the writer, MG Law. I was hoping to watch MG Law last night, but the internet went out. How many of you out there got Spectrum? The internet went out for over 5 hours. So I just want to know. My son called, they said they're updating their system, this and that. Did it have anything to do with the tornadoes we had here in southern Indiana? Which we had a tornado touchdown around Salisbury, Indiana. They call it Lewis and Clark subdivision, wherever that is in Salisbury. And, they had tarps up on the roof. I guess it tore some shingles up. And thanks to U-Haul, he told me about this other YouTuber, which you saw me last night when I live streamed it. And they're storm spotters, or they go out and look for stuff like that. So thank you, sir, for showing that last night. I wish you would subscribe to my channel. But I don't have the gas to go out and drive around to find stuff like that. You all recommend that I do court cases. There's another one I was watching, Chad Daybell, which he was accused of killing his wife and the kids or something. I got my reasonable doubts on that, but this Karen Reed story, you all need to watch this. If it's not mine, there's other YouTube channels you can watch. I have my reasonable doubts. I've been listening to the evidence, the prosecutor, defense, this and that. And I watch the expression on the police officers, paramedics, EMTs. I watch all of it. I have trained myself over the years to see if they're lying, just like police officers. They train to look for certain things in your face. So, just take your time. Don't rush to judgment. Okay, it's time back from the break, you all. God bless you all.
Step up.
Right. Thank you so much for the evidence of the court jury in case they're here and the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So, thank you.
Slide right up closer to the mic.
Okay, I got a question. If you all know how to get in touch with Karen Reed's lawyer, tell them to be careful what they say, because the cameras is there. There's people that can read lips. So if you know how to get in touch with their lawyer, advise them of that.
Since 2005, maybe 20 years. 2005, I think.
And who, if anyone, you live in?
My husband, Michael, and my 2 children.
And how old are you?
Right now, 13 and 16.
And starting with the 16-year-old, was that a boy or a girl?
Girl.
And the 13-year-old, was that a boy?
Boy.
And as far as activities are concerned with your kids, do they play sports or they do other sorts of activities?
They play sports. Yep.
And which sports does your 16-year-old play?
Currently, right now, softball.
And has she played any other sports in the past?
She played soccer. She played hockey for a little bit, but mostly soccer and softball.
And your 13-year-old son, what, if any, sports?
Hockey and baseball.
Now, you work, man?
I do.
What do you do?
I'm a nurse.
And how long have you been working?
21 years.
And your husband, does he work?
He does.
What does he do?
He's a laborer.
And how long has he been doing that?
Probably 25, maybe even 30 years, actually.
And how long have the two of you been together?
Married?
Yeah.
20 years. 20 years. 2004.
Now, ma'am, if I could turn your attention to January 28th, 2022 into January 29th, 2022. Do you recall those couple days?
Yeah.
And do you recall what days of the week they were?
It was Friday into Saturday night.
And starting with the Friday of the 28th, were you working that day?
I was working that night.
And sort of typically what kind of shift you work as
I work 7p to 7a, nights, mostly weekends.
the weekends would be sort of typically when you'd be at work?
Yes.
And around this time of January 2022, when you were at work, do you know what sort of your husband and your children would be doing typically on like Friday night?
Friday night they went to Johnny's house a lot, and the kids hung out, and they all just hung out together on a Friday night.
Now, starting with Johnny, who you referred to, you mean John O'Keefe, is that correct?
Yes.
How is it that you came to know John?
My husband got introduced to him, and then the girls started hanging out probably 2018, fourth grade. The boys around the same time when he moved to Meadows, probably around that time.
And so Mr. O'Keefe, he had a niece and a nephew of who he was a guardian, is that correct?
Correct.
And he had a niece named Kaylee and a nephew named Patrick, correct?
Correct.
And they lived with him, is that correct?
Correct.
Now, with regard to his niece Kaylee and your daughter, how do they know each other?
They first met on the soccer team, probably soccer. Yes, they met at soccer fourth grade. Or was it it could have been basketball. She played basketball when she was that little, Madeline. Basketball team, fourth or fifth grade. And then quickly by the fifth, sixth grade, they were like best friends attached to the hip.
And as far as Mr. O'Keefe's nephew Patrick, in relation to your son, were they the same age as well?
They were. They played baseball together.
And outside of baseball, were they friendly as well?
Yes.
And so a typical Friday night would be you were at work and your husband and the kids would go over to Mr. O'Keefe's house.
Correct.
You knew where Mr. O'Keefe's house was?
Yes.
And where was that?
On Meadows Ave.
About how far away from your house was Mr. O'Keefe's house on One Meadows Ave?
Maybe 2 miles, maybe. I don't know.
So fairly short distance?
Yes.
Now, with regard to this specific Friday night, January 28th, you were at work and you know what sort of the plan was with reference to the rest of your family?
Michael, my son, was going to play with a friend of his, a school play in the town, and Michael was going to Johnny's with Madeline, my daughter, and they were gonna hang out there for the night, and Michael and Johnny were gonna potentially go out.
Now, with reference to your daughter and Mr. O'Keefe's niece, Kaylee, what, if anything, around specifically to that day, what, if anything, was sort of going on with them and their school?
They had just got into Bishop Ian High School that day.
And at this time in January 2022, what grade were they in?
They were in 8th. They were going into 9th that September.
And so they had been accepted to this private school, Bishop Ian, and got their acceptance letters that day.
Yep.
And what, if any, conversation do you recall having with Mr. O'Keefe in reference to that on that day?
They were just really excited about it. Everyone was really excited that they just got in.
Now, at some point, well, beyond sort of, if you could just sort of describe the nature of your relationship by you, like you, plural, as far as you and your husband, with regard to Mr. O'Keefe.
He was our friend. He was really good to me and my kids.
And as far as the kids were concerned, what, if any, sort of interplay did you have with regard to his kids and he have with regard to
I worked weekends, and he would take my kids to sporting. I would do a lot of the stuff during the week if I was around the practices. And him and my husband would always do the games. The kids used to call them my two dads. It was like they had a lot of fun together. It was like a well-oiled machine.
Now, through your friendship with Mr. O'Keefe, at some point did you come to know someone by the name of Karen?
Yes.
And who was Karen?
I would socialize with them.
About how often would you do that?
Well, the kids were around mostly, but maybe a few times. I feel like the kids were usually always around.
Now, at some point, did you become aware that your husband and Mr. O'Keefe had gone out that evening?
Yes.
And how did you become aware of that?
I don't know, either Michael told me or my daughter told me. One of them told me. I forget who.
And do you know where your husband went that night?
I don't remember if he told me exactly where he went.
And at some point, you're still at work, you're working an overnight, is that correct?
Yes.
And the rest of your family, being your husband and your kids, they came home at some point?
They did.
And how do you know sort of when or how they came home?
I have an alarm on my house, so I know when somebody opens the door. I can check at work, and it alerts me if the door's open, if the alarm is on, off, who puts it on, who puts it off, what doors are open, when the alarm is rearmed. And if I usually don't allow sleepovers, and even if I did, my husband would have called me at work.
So fair to say there's a rule within your house that sleepovers don't happen unless you approve?
Yeah.
Now, at some point, I'm going to turn your attention now to the morning of the 29th. At some point, while you were at work, did you receive a call from someone?
Yes.
And who, if anyone, called?
Karen.
And about what time was that?
Probably between 4 and 5.
And what, if anything, did the defendant say to you when she called you around 4 or 5?
She was just screaming, "Where's Mike? Where's Mike?"
And was that a typical sort of situation that you would get a call from the defendant at that time?
No, not at all.
And the screaming that you heard, or the phraseology of "Where's Mike," is that something she said once or more than once or something?
She just kept saying it. She just kept saying, "Where's Mike?"
And what, if anything, did you say in response to that?
I was just like, hold on, calm down. And as I was doing it, I was rechecking like the alarm. I said, he's home with the kids. Let me call him. And at some point I hung up. I called my husband, like, I don't know, probably, it felt like 100 times.
Now, you're at work when you get this call, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you recall sort of where you were, what you were doing when you got the call?
I was getting ready to draw like morning labs, so I knew it was between like 4 and 5 a.m. Somewhere early
As
morning.
this sort of screaming as far as "Where's Mike," what, if anything, did the defendant indicate as to why she was asking?
John didn't come home.
And from your knowledge of John O'Keefe, was that something that was normal or not?
No.
Now, during this sort of initial call with the defendants, what, if anything, did you hear sort of in the background of that call?
That first call? I don't think I heard anything in that.
Your memory exhausted as to that?
Yeah, I don't remember it.
May I approach you with that?
Yes.
And, ma'am, what I'm going to do is I'm going to place a document for you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to to direct your attention to this second paragraph on the page. If you could just read that to yourself.
Okay. Oh, okay, yeah. I didn't know if that was the.
Anything further, may I please?
Yep. Yes. Oh, yeah, sorry.
So Ms. Camerano, after reading what I just placed before you, is your memory refreshed as to what, if anything, you heard in the background?
Yeah. I could hear Kaylee in the background.
And you hang up on that call, and then what did you do?
Call Michael. And
at any point when you're calling Michael, I think you said you felt like it was about 100 times. Did your husband Michael answer the phone?
He never answered. No.
And so after you called your husband many times, he didn't answer. What did you do?
I called either Karen's phone or Kaylee's phone back. I texted John, I think, twice. And then I could, whoever's phone I called, I could hear Jen in the background, that someone had called Jen too.
So you were speaking on the phone with either the defendant or Kaylee, correct?
Yep.
And you could hear someone named Jen in the background?
Yep, I could hear her in the background.
And when you say you could hear someone...
Like it sounded, sorry.
No. So just as far as Jen, who is that?
Jen McCabe. She was one of Madeline's basketball coaches, so I know her voice.
Her sort of voice on the sideline?
Yeah, yep.
Did you know her personally at all?
I knew her as Madeline's coach.
And at some point you were talking to Kaylee on the phone, correct?
Yes.
And what is it that you were saying to Kaylee about?
I was just saying to her, is everybody okay? And she said they're gonna go out looking for him. I think she said they were gonna go out looking, or she went out, she's gonna go out. No one knows where he is. And then I think I like hung up with her. And then at some point I maybe texted Kaylee or called, and I said, is Karen out alone? And she said, no, she's with Jen and Kerry. So I said, okay, as long as they're not alone.
Now, the second phone call, you're talking to Kaylee, and you can hear the defendant talking to Ms. McCabe, is that correct?
Yes.
And you hear one side of the conversation or both sides of the conversation?
I don't really recall exactly. I felt like it was just like a lot of like screaming, like he's not home. I don't really recall 100%.
But as far as the screaming that you heard that he's not home, do you recall whose voice that was that you heard saying that?
It was Karen.
And beyond that, as far as the conversation that you overheard, what, if anything, specific about that conversation in addition to that you recall?
I don't.
And while these phone calls are going on, again, you're at work, correct?
Correct.
So what is it that you're doing sort of in relation to your job while these phone calls are going back?
I'm trying to like, in between, draw labs for my patients, and then I'm like going in the back room, texting or calling, and then I'd go back out to the desk, out to the patients.
You mentioned that the defendant was sort of screaming when she was talking to you on the phone and you heard her in the background. You talking to Kaylee?
Yeah.
Could you describe sort of, or how would you describe sort of her, and by her I mean the defendant's demeanor while you heard her on the phone?
She was just like frantically screaming. Just screaming. Where's Mike?
Now, during this time, you're sort of working, you're dealing with patients, and you're going back and
Yeah.
forth with patients on the phone.
Mhm.
And in addition to speaking on the phone with the defendant and then with Kaylee, who, if anyone else, did you reach out to or did you talk to that morning?
I talked to Carrie Roberts in the morning. At some point, I don't know if I called her or she called me. And she said that I think that he was going to the hospital, and then I called my husband and told him that Kaylee was home alone and that he should go get her because she was at the house alone.
Is it your understanding that your husband Michael then went to Meadows to pick up Kaylee?
Mm-hmm. Yes, sorry.
Now, you mentioned that at some point you spoke to Carrie Roberts, is that correct?
Yes.
How do you know Carrie Roberts?
I've known her since high school.
And as far as you grew up in the same town, is that correct?
No, I was friends with her cousin, so I had known her. And I've always known her. I've been friends with her for a while.
Just one moment now.
Sure.
May I approach the witness, John?
Yes.
Now, I'm going to show you what's been previously marked as Exhibit 48. And before I do that, I just need to show counsel what I'm showing. May I approach him?
Yes.
What's been marked as Exhibit 48, specifically on page 22. With respect to that box, white box sort of towards the top of the page, you see a listing as sort of participants of that conversation.
Yes.
That's a text conversation.
Yes.
And who is sort of listed as the participant within that conversation?
Katie Camerano and JJ.
And is JJ another sort of name or nickname for John O'Keefe?
Yep.
And the content, there's two blue bubbles on the bottom of that page, is that correct?
Correct.
And do you recognize the content of those bubbles?
Yes.
And what do you recognize those?
My text messages to him.
Those are text messages just testified about as far as sending to John that morning.
Correct.
And both of them are from you with no response from Mr. O'Keefe.
Correct.
And about what time are the two text messages sent to Mr. O'Keefe according to that document?
5:10.
May I approach this retrieve now?
Yes.
Mhm.
Now, Ms. Camerano, you had mentioned in your testimony that you had some phone calls or conversations with Ms. Reed on the morning of January 29th, correct?
Correct.
May I approach again, Your Honor?
Yes.
Showing you another document there.
Mhm.
Ask that you look at that and look up when you finish.
Yep.
And that document, do those seem to reflect the calls that you have between yourself and the defendant, Ms. Reed, on that morning of the 29th?
Yeah.
Objection, Your Honor. May we approach witness?
Sure. Could I please see that?
Get
This
down.
camera right here. Thank you.
And so, Ms. Camerano, from that document, does that seem to be the phone calls, the timing of the phone calls between yourself and Ms. Reed that morning?
Okay. Yes.
May I approach the interim?
Yes.
I won't proceed to introduce in a minute the next exhibit.
Any objection, Mr. Jackson?
Not at this time, Your Honor.
All right, thank you.
I'm turning that to you, and it's now marked as Exhibit 51. Your Honor, with the court's permission, I would request to publish that to the jury on the screen.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Camerano.
Thank you, Madam Court Reporter.
And I'm sorry, Ms. Gilman, if you could please just speak to Mark as
Mr. Lally, keep your voice up and step aside so all jurors can see this, please.
Yes. Just before we get to what's up on the screen, is that what you have before you as Exhibit 51?
Yes.
No, Ms. Camerano, starting from sort of as far as the order of these, do you see sort of to and from and sort of date times on there?
Yes.
And does it appear as if the earlier times are sorted towards the bottom and then it goes on in time and chronology towards the top?
Yes.
Ms. Gilman, if you could scroll to sort of the bottom of the box. Now, with reference to essentially there are 6 boxes, am I correct?
Correct.
And with regard to box 6, if you could just tell the jury sort of.
It says 1/29/2022, 4:49 a.m. to Katie Camerano, answered 2 minutes and 51 seconds.
And the box above that, number 5.
From, it looks like I called her at 4:56 on 1/29 for 2 minutes and 57 seconds, answered.
And the box above that, number 5, please.
I called her 5 a.m., 2 minutes and 4 seconds, answered. And then I called her again at 5:32 for 8 seconds. That was answered. And then I called her again at 5:34, was missed. At 5:34 was missed. And then I called her again at 6:44 and 49 seconds, and that was not answered.
Thank you. May I approach this to retreat, Your Honor?
Yes.
You can take that down.
Thank you.
Now, with respect, Cameron, it's your testimony that in addition to the phone calls that you have with the defendant, you also have some texts back and forth that morning as well?
Correct.
And Your Honor, may I approach?
Yes.
Ms. Cameron, show me the document. Asking if you could just take a look at that and look up when you finish.
Yep.
And do you recognize what that what's in that document?
Yes.
What do you recognize?
It's my text to Karen.
And with respect to the sort of first page of that, is there also similar to the ones I showed you with regards to Mr. O'Keefe? Is there a listing as far as the participants in that conversation?
Yes.
And who does it state?
It's Karen Reed and Katie Camerano.
May I approach again?
Yes.
I'll move to seat to introduce in a minute to make consider.
No objection, Mr. Jackson?
Objection, Your
All
Honor.
right, thank you.
My question, did they ever find O'Keefe's cell phone? Where's his cell phone? Have they introduced his cell phone?
Your Honor, returning what's now been marked as Exhibit 52 to you. And Your Honor, with the court's permission, I would publish this on the screen for the jury as well.
Okay.
Now, Ms. Camerano, if I could direct your attention to sort of the content of this. There's blue bubbles and green bubbles, is that correct?
Correct.
And is there an indication on there as far as who the message is from and who the message is to?
The blue bubbles would be me texting Karen.
And if you could, starting with the first bubble on page 1, if you could just describe to the jury, and we'll sort of go through it as far as who the text is from and what the content is.
That's from me. I'm asking Karen, are you okay?
Ms. Gilman, if you could scroll down. And this next bubble.
Go back home so you're safe with Kaylee. He'll end up home. I bet he's on someone's couch.
And the next bubble down, Ms. Gilman.
What's going on, Karen?
If you could scroll down a little further, Ms. Gilman.
I'm driving around with Carrie and Jen.
And this is the text that you received from the previous.
Yes.
And is there a time on that associated with when that text was sent?
I can't read that from there. 5:53, does it say?
5:53 a.m., is that correct?
Oh, 5:53, yes.
Ms. Gilman, if you could scroll down to the next text.
Okay, is one of them driving?
And just to be clear, this is you texting.
I'm texting Karen, yes. Is one of them driving? And then,
And why were you texting that, or why were you concerned about that?
because she was so hysterical, I didn't want her driving.
And Ms. Gilman, if you could scroll down to the next message. And what, if any, response have you received from this?
Yes.
Ms. Gilman, if you could, scroll down to the next.
And I said, okay, keep me posted.
Gilman, if you could scroll down.
At his brother's or mom's ? Or the station he works at.
Both of those messages, about what time were those?
6 a.m.
And what, if any, Ms. Gilman, if you could scroll down, and then what, if any, response did you receive from the defendant, Ms. Reed, following those days?
I don't think so. His bro is in West Bridgewater, Bridgewater.
Ms. Gilman, if you could scroll down again. Next message, ma'am.
Right, I'm sorry, I'm just brainstorming.
Next green button, ma'am.
It's okay.
And the blue bubble below that.
Any luck?
And that was a text you sent at approximately what time now?
6:34.
And Ms. Gilman, if you could scroll down. Next. And what what was,
He's dead.
and again, at what time did you receive that text message?
6:34.
Ms. Gilman, if you could scroll down. Again,
What, Karen? Are you serious?
that's a blue bubble, your response to the last statement.
Yes.
Ms. Gilman, scroll down again.
And then, Karen, do you have any idea where he is, or did you find him?
Last thing, Ms. Gilman, if you could scroll down one more time.
He was in the snow.
And that last message that you received, what time was that?
That was at 6:36.
Ms. Gilman, you can take that down. And Mr. Roger, if you could go ahead. Thank you. Following that text message, the last one about 6:34 a.m., what, if any, other communication did you have with the defendant at that point?
Nothing.
What, if any, other communication did you have with the defendant since then?
None.
Now, as far as any of the other people that you spoke of, as far as talking to that morning, Ms. Roberts or Kaylee, did you have any further conversation with them in regard to what was going on?
No.
Can I have just one moment here? Nothing further for this witness, Your Honor.
All right. Cross-examination?
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. Good. To Mr. Lawler's last point, after that series of text messages that you had early in the morning on January 29th, 2022, you said you didn't hear from Ms. Reed or didn't have any communication with her after that. Is that right?
Yeah. Yes.
Did you reach out to her text message wise?
No.
Were you aware that her phone had been seized shortly thereafter from her?
No.
Thank you. That's all I have.
All right, Ms. Camerano. Oh, there's nothing else, Mr. Lally, right? All right, Ms. Camerano, you're all set. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Your next witness, Mr. Lally?
Yes, Your Honor. The call to call Mr. Kirk Roberts to the stand.
Do solemnly swear the embassy of the court and jury in the case now and hearing to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. Thank you. Just nice and loud into that microphone, thanks. Thanks.
All right, whenever you're ready, Mr. Lally.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Could you please state your name and spell your last name?
Kurt Roberts, Roberts.
And where do you live, sir?
Canton, Mass.
And how long have you lived in Canton?
About 12 years now.
And who, if anyone, do you live in Canton with?
I live with my wife and 2 children.
And your wife, what is your wife's name?
Kerry.
And how long have the two of you been married?
We've been married 15 years.
And you mentioned you have 2 children, is that correct?
Yes.
And how old are you?
My daughter is 14 and my son is 12.
And do you work, sir?
I do.
And what do you do?
I'm a heavy equipment operator.
About how long have you been doing it?
26 years.
And your wife, Carrie, does she work as well?
She does.
And what does she do?
She's a executive assistant.
And do you know about how long she's been doing
I think about 18 years.
And if I could turn your attention to the evening of January 28th, 2022. Do you recall that day?
I do.
And do you recall anything about what you were doing? Do you recall what day of the week it was?
I know it was a Friday night.
And earlier in the day, do you recall anything specific about what you were doing that day?
Gee, no, I don't. Nothing stands out.
And at some point in time in the evening, where were you? Mission.
Excuse me?
So at some point in time in the evening, were you at home?
Yes, I was at home.
And while you were at home, who, if anyone, reached out?
Michael Camerano and John O'Keefe.
And starting with Michael Camerano, how do you know?
I grew up with him since 6th grade. We're both from the same town, Milton.
So the two of you grew up in Milton together. You've known him essentially since then.
Yes.
How would you describe sort of your relationship with Mr. Camerano?
We're friends.
And does Mr. Camerano, does he have any children around the age of your two children?
Yes, he is, I believe, a 16-year-old daughter and a 12-year-old son.
And his son and your son, do they do any sort of activities together?
They did. They played baseball together.
Now, you mentioned John O'Keefe as well, correct?
Yes.
And how did you know John O'Keefe?
When his sister and brother-in-law had passed, he had moved into the house that they lived in my neighborhood. And my wife knew him previously and introduced me in.
And the house that he moved into with regard to where his sister and brother-in-law lived, where was that in relation to where you lived?
An eighth of it, like not far, very easily walking distance, maybe not far.
And the house that Mr. O'Keefe moved into, who, if anyone, did he initially live there with when he moved?
He moved in there with the two, his niece and nephew.
So his niece and nephew from the couple that had passed.
Yes.
And you had a niece named Kaylee, is that correct?
Yes.
A nephew named Patrick.
Yes.
And with respect to his nephew Patrick, how old was he in relation to your son and Mr. Camerano?
Same age.
And as far as the activities,
Same,
baseball and stuff?
same baseball team, yep.
So all three of the kids, played baseball together for several years.
Yes.
Now, at some point, did Mr. O'Keefe move away from that house? Or was
He did. He moved to One Meadows.
And sort of from your house, where was that in relation to your house?
Probably 2 or 3 miles. A lot further away.
A lot further away, sort of on the Stoughton side of Canton, is that correct?
That's correct.
And do you recall about what year it was that the kids moved over to Memphis?
Oh, maybe 2019, maybe? I'm not sure of that.
Now, at some point, on the course of through your knowing Mr. O'Keefe, did you come to know someone by the name of Karen? And when was it in relation to January 28th, 2022? About how long before that was it that you met Karen?
Probably maybe a year or two.
About a year or two before?
Yes, I don't have I don't recall exactly.
Do you recall when it was that you first met her?
I think she might have came to my house, maybe with John.
Okay. Now, as far as, what if anything did you know as far as the relationship between Miss Reed and Miss Rose?
I don't understand.
Who was Miss Reed to Mr. O'Keefe?
Oh, girlfriend. Sorry.
Nothing is your fault. It's entirely my question. Okay. So, with respect, and just so we're clear as far as what we're talking about, do you see Ms. Reed in the courtroom today?
Yes, I do.
If you could just identify as to where she's seated or an article of clothing she's wearing.
She's seated right there.
And again, just as a record reflect identification.
Yes.
By the witness. Thank you. Now, as far as their relationship, that, and by they, I mean Mr. O'Keefe and Ms. Reed, is that something that you talked to Mr. O'Keefe about?
No.
And sort of vice versa, as far as your relationship with your wife, is that something that you talked to Mr. O'Keefe about?
No.
Now, with regard to that particular evening, January 28th, 2022, you mentioned at some point Mr. Camerano and or Mr. O'Keefe reached out to you.
They did.
And what was that, in regard to, what was that conversation?
They reached out, they were at McCarthy's, the bar in Canton Center, and they wanted me to come up. And I was sick, I wanted to stay in because there was a storm coming. And then he called me a pussy. And I can't let that happen, so I had to go.
Fair enough.
I had to go up there and.
Do you recall who it was that called you that?
It was Michael Camerano.
Let the record reflect. Okay. You receive that text and you go to CF McCarthy's, is that right?
That's right.
And you mentioned that's in Canton Center?
Yes.
About how far a drive is that from your house to CF McCarthy's?
2.5, maybe 3 miles at best.
And you recall about what time it was that you received that now infamous text and you go make your way to CF McCarthy's?
Yes, it was about 20 past 8.
Was that a place that you had been to before?
Not often, but I have been there before.
When you arrive to CF McCarthy's, who, if anyone, that you know is sort of there when you get there?
John O'Keefe and Michael Camerano.
And if you could, for the jury, just describe sort of what you know of sort of the inside of CF McCarthy's as far as you walk in the door and what is the layout of the bar?
Walk in the door, go to the left, and the bar's right in front of you. It's a big square bar. And then the bathrooms are in the back, and there's tables off to the left.
And where in relation to the bar and the tables and what you described were Mr. O'Keefe and Mr. Camerano?
And walking to the left, they were on my left.
And the area where you came up to and where they were, is that essentially sort of the same area that you and the group that you were with stayed in for most of the night?
Yes.
And if you recall, so you went out to a bar, fair to say you had something, correct?
Yes.
Recall what you were drinking that night?
I believe it was a Bud Light.
Do you recall whether that was draft or a bottle or something?
It was a bottle.
That's sort of typically what you would drink when you go out?
Back then, yes.
And with regard to Mr. Camerano and Mr. O'Keefe, recall what they were drinking that night?
I believe the same as me. I believe. I wasn't much paying attention to that, but that's what they normally would drink.
With the with the court's permission, if I could publish to the jury portions of what's been marked as Exhibit 50 to CF McCarthy's video.
Okay.
Now, Ms. Gilman, if I could ask for the second video. And if I could ask you to push it forward to 34 minutes and 10 seconds. And if you could pause it there just a moment. Now, Ms. Roberts, direct your attention to the screen, what's been marked as Exhibit 50. Also, I believe there should be a laser pointer on the desk in front of you. So if you just click on that button and point it in a direction, you can sort of highlight it. So if I could ask you, first of all, do you recognize what's depicted up on the screen as Exhibit 50?
Yes.
And what do you recognize it to be?
I see John right there and Michael right there.
And does this appear to be consistent with what you recollect as far as the interior of City of MacArthur on January 20th?
Yes.
And this area that you just pointed out to as far as where Mr. O'Keefe and Mr. Camerano is that the area where you just testified to they essentially were during the time that you...
Yes, it is.
Now, with respect to Mr. O'Keefe, you can see sort of what he's wearing in this video, is that correct?
Yes.
And the clothing, at least as far as you can see, is that the clothing that you observed Mr. O'Keefe to be wearing that night?
Yes, that was what he was wearing.
And Ms. Gilman, if you could, I would ask just to play this from the 34:10 mark until 35. Pause there just a moment. The gentleman that just came in through the door, do you recognize him, sir?
Yes, I do.
And who do you recognize him?
That's me.
So that was about the time that you arrived, is that correct?
Yes.
Ms. Gilman, if you could just continue with another 30 seconds. Directing your attention still up to the screen, Mr. Roberts, there's another individual around yourself, Mr. O'Keefe and Mr. Camerano, was that correct?
Yes.
And do you recognize who that person is?
At the time, I didn't know. I didn't know. He doesn't look the same in this picture right now, but I believe it's Sully.
And that's someone at this time on January 28th, you didn't know who that was?
No, I did not.
You now do?
I do now, yes.
Okay. Who do you know to be in relation to sort of yourself, Mr. Camerano, and Mr. O'Keefe?
Well, I know his son played baseball on my son's baseball team. Then I met him that night, we were talking.
This would have been the first time that you had met this person you now know as Sully?
Yes.
Thanks. Now, with reference to this evening, at some point, if anyone else sort of came into the bar and joined you?
Karen Reed.
And that was sometime after you had initially arrived, is that
I
correct?
believe so, yes. It was after I had already been there, I believe.
And Ms. Gilman, if I could, from the same exhibit, we're going to the fourth video down. And if I could ask you to bring it up to 22 minutes and 20 seconds. Now, as far as Ms. Reed, you see Ms. Reed in this video?
Yes, I do.
And if you could, just using that laser pointer direct your attention. Where you see Ms. Reed?
Right there.
Now, Mr. Roberts, you were, fair to say, a little reluctant to come out that evening, is that correct?
That's correct.
And as far as timing, about how long was it that you stayed at CF MacArthur before you left?
It's a good hour. 1 hour.
An hour or so?
So I was home by about 10:15. I was home.
And if you recall, about how many beers did you have while you were there?
Probably 3 or 4.
And what you were drinking, was that, as far as amount was that the same, less, more so than sort of the other people that you were with?
Probably one more. I would think. I kind of drank them kind of fast because taken off.
So you may have lapped him by a round or something?
Sure, yes.
Now, you mentioned what you and Mr. O'Keefe and Mr. Camerano were drinking. What, if anything, did you observe Ms. Reed to be drinking at that?
It was a clear glass with probably a lime in it. I'm assuming a vodka tonic, maybe. I'm not positive what it was, but it was a clear glass with.
And from your prior sort of interactions or socialization with Ms. Reed, is that something that she would typically drink?
Yes, I would say.
And about what time was it, again, that you left?
I think I left about 10 o'clock. It took me a few minutes to get home, so.
And with regard to when you left, did you sort of announce that to anybody, or how did you?
I usually don't, because then I'll have to deal with it again. But when we walked out, I did. Me and Michael Camerano, I believe, about the same time. I might have been a minute or two before him. That's all.
So you sort of exit and leave, and then at some point in time, around the time that you left, Mr. Camerano left as well.
That's right.
And Ms. Gilman, from what's up here is Exhibit 50, if I could ask you to just play from this point, so about 22 minutes and 50 seconds. And there, Ms. Gilman, you can take that. That's your boss, correct?
I believe so, yes.
So fair to say that was about the time that you left. And with regard to during the time that you were at McCarthy's with this group, including yourself, Mr. O'Keefe, Mr. Camerano, and Ms. Reed, how would you describe sort of the general tone or demeanor of the group while you were there?
Everything very normal. Just a few friends out having some drinks. Nothing that stands out.
No arguing, no anything?
No.
And as far as the clothing that I asked you about with regard to what Mr. O'Keefe was wearing, when you were there that night, did you notice anything as far as tears in the clothing or any dishevelment or anything like that?
No, I didn't notice anything.
And when you were there and you were talking to Mr. O'Keefe, what, if any, sort of injuries or anything about him did you note as far as his face or anything else that you could see?
Nothing, no.
Now, once you left, where did you go?
I went home.
And do you recall when you got home? I think you already said it, but about what time was it that you got home?
But I think 10:15 would be my best guess.
When you got home, who, if anyone else from your house, from your family, was there?
I believe my wife and kids were there. They're up in bed, but they weren't downstairs. So.
And at some point, did you go to bed that evening?
I did.
And about what time was it?
Probably I saw the snow start coming down. Probably 11:30, 12, maybe midnight.
And about the time you mentioned that you had been aware that there was a storm coming, correct?
Yes.
About the time that you went to bed around midnight or so, what, if anything, did you observe? Did you look outside or see anything?
It was snowing. So
and in relation to that, what, if anything, could you hear while you were in the house, sort of making your way to bed?
The wind was hitting the windows. He just knew it was a storm.
Now, you go to sleep with your wife, correct?
That's right, yes.
The next morning on the 29th, what, if anything, is it that wakes you up?
a voice on my wife's phone was yelling, like screaming, frantic on the. It wasn't, and that woke me up. So I asked, what is that?
And initially, did you recognize that voice on your wife's phone?
I didn't recognize it, but I just couldn't make out the words. But it was just a screaming.
And could you hear anything as far? You couldn't make out the words.
I couldn't make out the no.
And at some point, did you?
I see 5 o'clock. Would be a good guess.
And as far as you wake up, you hear the screaming. What happened?
My wife gets up. She starts getting crazy, then putting her clothes on and running out. I'm telling her not to go because the weather was pretty bad at that point. And of course, she goes.
So she doesn't listen to you, and she continues to get dressed to go.
Yes.
And when you say the weather was pretty bad at that point, can you expound upon that as far as what you
said? It was snowing. It was very windy. It was snowing heavy.
And your wife, Carrie, did she say where she was going?
Said, John's missing.